Oh, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the 12 Beers of Christmas Craft Beer Experience. My name is Brian Hathaway.
And my name is Cait Cremens. Hey guys, good to see you again.
Thanks for coming back, Cait. I had such a fun time with you last night.
I just had so much fun that I had to come back.
Well, I'm so glad you did. So, without further ado, let's open Night 6's beer.
Let's do it.
And of course, it's time for Box Cam. What do we have?
Ooh, very
Optimal
pretty.
Wit from Port City. And we have a wonderful sticker from Port City as well. The chat is going crazy. Lots of love for Port City there. And I myself love this beer. So I'm super excited to get this absolutely superb Belgian wit into my glass. While I do that, since we have some time tonight, we didn't really get to know you too well last night, Cait. You want to tell us a little bit about what you do for City Brew Tours?
Absolutely. So, like I said, my name is Cait, and I am a customer success associate here at City Brew Tours. I'm based in Boston, where a lot of our team is based. Well, we're based all over the place, but there's a couple of us in Boston. And when I'm not working at City Brew Tours, I am an actor. So, a little bit of customer service, a little bit of acting.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we got a wonderful show for everybody tonight. We have a very special guest that's going to be joining us in just a second here. We're going to talk about this awesome beer. We're going to talk about the awesome brewery that is Port City. Talk about a couple other things, I think, too, but some housekeeping first.
Don't forget to keep all of your banter in the chat, guys, and your questions in the Q&A. And in the chat, don't forget to turn your settings to panelists and attendees so we can all chat together.
Wonderful. So without further ado, if everyone would please welcome our amazing guest this evening. He's the founder, the owner, the guru behind everything that is Port City Brewing Company. Please welcome Bill Butcher. How you doing, Bill?
Hey, how you doing, Brian? Hey, Caitlin.
Hey.
Good to see you guys.
We're so happy to have you here.
Good to see you as well, Bill. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to get into Optimal Wit. We're going to get into a little bit of your background in the wine industry, a little bit about Port City. But before we do that, I would love to hear about your first beer, like good beer memory. This is one question that I love asking people when we're talking about beer. Do you have an early beer memory that was like the light switch turning on moment?
I do have, I call it, kind of a light bulb moment, like you said, the light switch. And it was when I was in college in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I went to James Madison University, and there was a store across campus called Midway Market. And I used to go over to Midway Market, and we would buy, like a lot of college kids that didn't have any money, we would buy cheap beer and take it back to the dorm and drink it.
Budget beer.
And only when my dad would come to visit would I be able to take him to Midway Market, and because he had money, more than I did certainly, I would convince him to help me get a 6-pack of Anchor Liberty Ale.
Ooh.
And that was a beer at the time. I'm dating myself here because it was $6.99 a 6-pack back in the day. Wow. And I could not imagine ever being able to afford $6.99 for a 6-pack of this was fancy beer from California. But it was my favorite beer in the day. It was hoppy. They claim that it's the first American IPA ever made.
Yes,
it was certainly the first one that I ever had.
Yeah, I was literally about to say your original beer story is the original American Pale Ale, American IPA. Liberty Ale started it all in 1976.
Exactly,
so cool.
Exactly. And so that beer was, it was my favorite beer at the time. And of course, I couldn't afford it. So a few times a year when my dad would come to visit me at college, I would drag him over to Midway Market, and he would buy me a 6-pack of Liberty Ale. And I actually, I got to share that story with Fritz Maytag. He came to DC.
Wow.
I guess it was about a year ago, when the Smithsonian was opening their beer exhibit.
Mhm.
And I was lucky enough to be invited to this event, this dinner, and Fritz Maytag was in attendance. And I got to sit at the table with him and share that story with him, that this was kind of the light bulb beer for me back in my college days. And it was just kind of a cool moment to be able to share that story with him.
That's unbelievable.
So cool.
Fritz is the greatest. Chat, has anybody ever had Anchor? You know, Anchor Steam is a legend. But Fritz Maytag is the founder of Anchor Brewing Company. Anchor is said to be the original American craft brewery. Long story short, Fritz, obviously his last name is Maytag. His family founded the washer and dryer company. He took some of his inheritance, bought his favorite brewery, Anchor Brewing Company, retooled the recipes to include all grain ingredients and really pay homage to European brewers. And this was 1965, I think, and Fritz inspired pretty much everyone that we now know and love in the brewing industry, from Ken Grossman to Bill Butcher. So my story is actually really similar.
And it was
sorry, go ahead.
What's that? No, I was just going to say regarding Fritz Maytag, he has a reputation in the industry for being kind of a curmudgeon. And I'll vouch for that. Having dinner with him that night, it was a great time, but I can see where he gets that reputation from.
Well, we're getting a lot of love for Anchor Christmas Ale, Anchor Steam in the chat there. My beer awakening moment's very similar. It involves my dad. My dad switched from drinking Straub, which is a very popular beer here in Pennsylvania, to Two Hearted Ale and Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. And when he switched to the better, more expensive beers, whenever I started stealing beers from him and discovered that beers weren't just American light and could be hoppy and aromatic and full bodied. Cait, what's your beer awakening story?
Well, like I said earlier, I am an actor, actress, whatever you want to say. And I was doing a show up in New Hampshire, and we had a really small cast, and most of them were hanging out with their families in the area, but I was alone up there in New Hampshire. So I decided to take the day and go to Portland, Maine, and I took a brewery tour there at Allagash, and I just thought it was so cool. I was like a total wine person before that, but I took the tour and I learned about brewing beer, and it was just so cool. So that was my light bulb moment.
Awesome.
That's cool. They know a thing or two about Belgian Witbier as well.
They do.
Indeed, they do.
So speaking of Belgian Witbiers, Bill, would you like to tell us a little bit about this Belgian Witbier we're enjoying tonight?
Yeah, for sure. Optimal Wit. This is a little background on the beer. This is our best seller. It has been our best-selling beer since day one. And we're very proud of this beer. It's an authentic Belgian wit recipe. So it's brewed in the traditional method with coriander, and we use dried Spanish orange peels, and kind of our secret ingredient that most other breweries that brew a wit beer don't use. We put grains of paradise in this beer, and that's a North African spice, a cooking spice. It's similar to a peppercorn, and it's something that our founding brewmaster, he likes the character that this gives to the beer. It's got kind of a white pepper character that you pick up, and as you sip through this beer, the white pepper character becomes a bit more outspoken. It's something that starts kind of subtle, and then it builds as you sip through the beer. And so it's really something that I think is great, because the beer is, obviously it's easy to drink. It's not bitter. It's very refreshing. But at the same time, it has very complex flavors that evolve in the glass as you sip through the beer. You pick up different flavors through the beer. And so its complexity really holds the interest of the beer drinker. And, as you taste it, it really just invites you back into the glass for another sip. And it's something that that I think holds the interest of sophisticated craft beer drinkers, because it is so complex, but also the fact that it's easy drinking and refreshing also just makes it a great introductory craft beer for people that are just getting into craft beer.
Definitely.
Yeah, it really hits all those different, from the beer nerds to the newbies to the know-it-alls, to tie back to my phrase, which was made fun of earlier in the week.
So, Bill, you started out in the wine industry, is that correct?
I did, yes. I was in the wine business for about 18 years before my wife and I decided to start the brewery.
Okay.
I worked for the Robert Mondavi winery when it was still a family-owned company, when the
That's so
Mondavis were.
cool.
I worked there from 1996 until the company was sold in 2004. And I was offered a job by the mega corporation, the multinational conglomerate that purchased the winery. But I didn't want to go work for the largest wine company in the world. I liked working for a family company and wanted to stick with that. So I turned down their offer and actually went with Michael Mondavi and a small group of us from the Robert Mondavi company. And we started a new wine import company. And so I did that for several years and then decided to strike out on my own and start Port City Brewing Company.
And what made you
Awesome.
decide to jump from wine to beer?
Well, craft beer is a beverage that I've enjoyed, since I've been able to legally drink beer. College, as I mentioned earlier, beer I thought was a very interesting drink, and really enjoyed drinking beer in college as well as after college. And so I kind of kept my eye on the craft beer business while I was in the wine business and got to know some craft beer people as well. Obviously they're different drinks, but they're sold through the same channels. So craft beer wholesalers are also wine wholesalers. Craft beer drinkers can also be wine drinkers, and retailers also, there's a lot of overlap there. So in my 18 years in the wine business, I built up long trusting relationships with retailers, with wholesalers, with hotels and restaurants, all throughout the mid-Atlantic, and watched the craft beer business as it was growing through the 90s and through the 2000s. And it was getting more and more sophisticated and becoming more and more like the wine business. And so I thought that, if we could do something in the DC area and treat craft beer with the same respect that we've always treated wine, and try to elevate the category, so to speak. But I thought if we could do something of super high quality, that people would give us a chance. And also at the time, thinking about this was in 2008, 2009, when we were working on the business plan. There were no craft breweries in the DC area. No
Very different beer world.
Oh, totally. So 10 years ago, and we had good brew pub culture in DC. We had great beer restaurants, the Brickskeller, and good brew pubs. Mad Fox had just opened in Falls Church. So there was a thriving craft beer scene, but there was nobody brewing craft beer inside the Beltway to sell out in the market. And so I thought that, we had something missing in the market. And I thought that if we could put together a team to do something of super high quality, that people would give us a chance, even in this very sophisticated market that DC is.
Yeah, that's awesome story.
Yeah.
Bill, Cait, and I shared our beer origin stories. Please chat, throw yours in there. I'm sorry, I should have said that earlier. And I love that we jumped into wine, because I want to talk about the difference between beer and wine from both a production level and a marketing level. So first, when you and your wife started to look into getting into craft beer and opening your own brewery, what challenges really surprised you in terms of making beer?
Well, the whole art and science of making beer was a challenge to me, because I'm not a brewer. I'm also not a winemaker. My expertise lies within marketing, sales, brand building, and working with working with distributors to build brands in the marketplace, as well as educating consumers. And that's really how we built our wine brands at the Robert Mondavi Company, by educating consumers and doing a lot of events. And I thought that through doing the same type of sales activities in the market, that would be the way for us to build our brand. So as far as the brewing end of it goes, I wasn't tricking myself into thinking that I could become a great brewer, but I did think that we could put a good team together that would be able to make world-class quality craft beer.
I love that.
And we touched a little bit about the GABF, and the GABF has kind of brought you that I'm at a complete loss for words. Has you won a lot of medals at the GABF, and that probably made you feel like, hey, we did make really good beer, and these people are recognizing us. I believe the beer we're drinking tonight has won 3 medals at GABF.
At GABF, yeah, it's won gold, silver, and bronze. So I like to say that beer has hit for the cycle at the Great American Beer Festival, and won 11 medals at the Great American Beer Festival since we opened 10 years ago. So,
including Small Brewery of the Year, right? You won the kind of big one for breweries. You won Small Brewery of the Year.
In 2015, we were named Small Brewery of the Year because we won more medals than any other small brewery in the country. And so that was in 2015. That was in our 4th year of business. And it really put us on the map as far as quality goes. People knew us in the region, in the DC area, but this really put us on the map nationally and drew a lot of attention to the brewery and really helped us just get a lot of name recognition, which was fantastic. And also not just us, but I think it helped put the DC brewing community on the map as a place that is serious about craft beer.
Speaking of DC, Bill, what made you choose DC, specifically Alexandria?
Good question. I've always worked I've always been based in the DC area when I was in the wine business. Atlantic was the market I worked in for so many years. I grew up in Alexandria, and my family's been in Alexandria for really since 1908. So we've got roots in the Alexandria community, and putting the brewery there made sense from a personal perspective to have it in my hometown, but it made sense from a business perspective because since there were no other breweries in the DC area at the time, packaging breweries, we wanted to be inside the Beltway. We wanted to be close to DC so we could speak directly to the DC beer community. So for those reasons, it made sense to have the brewery be located in Alexandria so we could be close to the DC beer drinkers. As far as the branding of the brewery, the name Port City refers to the history of Alexandria, which was founded as a colonial seaport. And Alexandria, it was founded in 1749. So there's a lot of history there. We're very proud of the history of Alexandria. And so we wanted to bake that into the brand of the brewery and have it become kind of part of the terroir of the brand that we have, and link the city itself, the location, to the branding of the brewery. So that's where the name came from. Just kind of celebrating the proud history of Alexandria, Virginia.
That's so
Awesome.
cool.
So chat is blowing up. People saying Firestone DBA was their gateway beer. I got some love for Yingling, Sam Adams, and Blue Moon. But one thing I'm seeing in the chat that I want to mention, and because it's something that caught my eye, Bill, what's up with the cow painting?
Good question. We're spending New Year's. We have a weekend place in the country in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains out in Virginia on the Rappahannock River. And so that's where we are. A lot of cows in the neighborhood. We don't have our own cows in our pasture, but we have a painting of a cow, and we get to enjoy the neighbors' cows that are in the pastures as kind of lawn ornaments for out here in Rappahannock County.
Awesome.
I feel like it's easier to have neighbors' cows as opposed to your own cows.
Or a painting of a cow.
Or a painting of a cow, even better.
Yeah, much less work.
isn't that old saying? You want to be the friend of somebody that owns a cow rather than own the cow yourself. Or maybe that's
I
about
think that's what they say. Mhm. Sounds about right.
Something you mentioned earlier, you hit for the cycle. You had a gold, a silver, and a bronze for optimal wit at GABF. I heard a little story about why you made the switch to these cans that might involve sports, baseball a little bit. Do you want to talk about why Port City, after bottling for so many years, finally made the switch to canning their beers?
Yeah, we, when was it? In 2012, we'd been open for a year, and I got in touch with the Washington Nationals because I've been going to Nationals games since 2005 when they moved here, and there was no local beer at the stadium. And so I got the name of the vice president of whatever, the customer experience, and made an appointment with him. And he's like, yeah, come on in, bring some samples and let's have a meeting. And so we met with them, and it so happened that they wanted to have a local beer presence, but the local beer scene was just getting started. And so we had only been open for a year, and they're like, we would have called you earlier, but we would wipe you out. We would,
you couldn't handle us
beer in our stadium. You wouldn't be able to keep up with it. And they were right. And so once the local, there was more of kind of a head of steam in the local beer scene. So you had Atlas opened up, and DC Brow opened up, and Three Stars and Mad Fox. And so once we had enough kind of momentum in the local beer community, then there was enough critical mass that we could have local beer at the Nationals stadium. So where I guess I was the first one to make the call, it really took all of us together, coming together as kind of a local beer community, being able to supply the stadium with what they call the district drafts program. And it's been very successful. So they put our beer on draft throughout the stadium, but they also wanted to sell local beer in cans. Well, we didn't have a canning line, but we're like, well, you want to put our beer in the hawkers' bins? We'll figure it out. So, when Nationals Park asks you to do something, you do everything you can to say yes to an opportunity like that. For sure.
Absolutely. Speaking of cans, kind of related, we have a question in our Q&A here. What do you think the proper glassware for this beer would be?
Good question. And I appreciate that the audience is paying attention to proper glassware. It's something that we have tried to emphasize since we started at the brewery. People talk about wine snobs and being all picky about the glass. And you can take it to an extreme, but your glassware does make a difference. And the proper glass for the particular style that you're drinking can enhance the experience. For a Belgian Witbier, the glassware that we use at the brewery, and Brian, I see that you've got proper glassware as well, but this is a Belgian tulip shaped. And what I like about this glass is that the shape of it really helps concentrate the aroma of the beer. It also kind of, being a wine guy, you get in the habit of swirling your glass, I guess. But this glass lends itself to that. So it really helps the aroma gather in the top of the glass and concentrates it. So when you're smelling this beer, it really enhances the aroma of it. But a Belgian tulip glass, I would consider that the proper glassware for this style of beer.
Awesome.
Great. So let's look.
By the way, I use this glass for IPA as well. At the brewery, we pour our porter into this glass as well. So it's a good all-purpose glass. I try not to get too hung up on glassware, having spent enough time in the wine business with people that are hung up on glassware. So use what works for you. Use what you got. But for this beer, this glass works perfectly.
Yeah, I think this is a really versatile glass too. I'll use it for a double IPA. I think I used it for like a pale ale last night. Chat, what are your favorite types of beers? There's all different glasses out there. We know we talked about styles already. We have our tulip glasses. We saw Julie use a no-nick pint the other day, which is the pint with the little ridge on it. We have our classic Boston shaker or faker shaker pints. We have the Tikus, which are becoming super popular and hype these days. But Chat, what's your favorite glass to use? I wanted to jump to something from the Q&A from my favorite attendee, Anonymous. Anonymous has a great question as always. Anonymous asked, Bill, for someone who has dreams of starting their own craft brewery one day, do you think it is still doable, or has the market become too saturated at this point?
That's a good question. And I think it depends on where you are. I would not start a brewery like Port City in a place like Portland, Oregon right now. I would not start a brewery like we started in San Diego right now or anywhere in Colorado. Look at our brewery. We brew standard styles. We brew European styles of beer. We brew them with our thumbprint on them. Every beer we brew has either a unique ingredient or a unique brewing style that other breweries don't use. And that's what makes our beers unique. But they're also true to style when you taste them. So that's our, if you can call that a niche, that's kind of where we fit in. But we're also the longest running brewery in the DC area as well. So we were the first in the market. And we, as you said earlier, Brian, we opened up when the beer world was very, very different, only 10 years ago. So I think if you're thinking of opening a brewery, look at the market that you're considering and look at what the competition looks like and look at where you're going to fit in and look at, are you just duplicating what somebody's already done, or are you doing something unique? Is there a particular style that you're going to specialize in that hasn't been really looked at in that particular market? But I do believe that breweries will continue to open and they will continue to be successful. It's more important than ever to focus on quality. And it's more important than ever to focus on having a smart, well thought out, well-crafted marketing plan of where these beers are going to go, who your customer is going to be, and how you're going to sell the beer. It comes down to having a well thought out marketing plan.
Yeah, 8,800 breweries in the United States. What are you going to do that's different? Like,
that's insane. Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've got lots of different beer glass types here in the chat. Big fan of, a mason jar with a lip. That's a cool one. From the can, no frills.
Rugby boot from TB. I don't know if that's a glass. You could drink beer out of it, but technically not a glass.
Red Solo cup. Keeping it simple. Yeah. So, Bill, can you tell us a little bit about the pineapple and where that came from?
Yeah, for people that have been to our brewery before, most people notice that as they pull up to the front of the brewery, our sign, sitting out on top of our sign, we have a fresh pineapple. And that is something that we've had out in front of the brewery every single day since the day we opened in February of 2011. And what it symbolizes basically is hospitality. And I mentioned earlier that Alexandria is a very historic seaport, and the legend goes that as sea captains would return to their home port after having been to exotic places and visited faraway lands, they would come home, and a pineapple back in the day was considered very exotic and very rare. And so they would come home, and the sea captain, as a symbol to show his neighbors that he was home and receiving visitors, he would take this exotic fruit, the pineapple, and spike it on his gate or his fence post out in front of his house. And that would symbolize to the neighbors that he was home safely, and that he was receiving guests. And so
I love that.
The evolution, it became a symbol of hospitality. We like to say it's a symbol of Virginia hospitality where we are. And so it's something that we picked up. We adopted that the day that we opened, And it's a symbol to our customers when they see the pineapple out front, they know that we're open and that we are receiving visitors.
That's wonderful.
So
Something I love
charming.
about, something I love about the beer industry is the personality of each tap room and the personality of each brewery that you visit, what makes them different, and that like that vibe that you get when you walk into a place. And I feel like that pineapple just sets you up right as you walk in. This is going to be a good time. So one more question from the chat. Bill, I know this is like asking you to pick a favorite kid, but do you have a favorite Port City beer?
Do I have a favorite Port City beer? I have two. And since I'm the owner of the brewery, I get to have two.
Like the rules.
I get two. Optimal Wit is one of my favorites because it's our best seller, and it has been our best seller since the day we opened. It's the best selling local craft beer in the DC market, and that's something that we're very proud of.
That's great.
It's also the best selling local beer at Nats Park when they're playing baseball and having fans. The beer that I drink a lot at home is Monumental IPA. And that really goes back to just IPA is my favorite style of beer. It's, it goes back to kind of my light bulb story earlier. And that was the beer that when my wife Karen and I started the brewery, we were buying local groceries, we were buying local produce, we're buying local meats, and all the beer we were buying was coming from California. And so we wanted to buy more local beer. We couldn't find at the time, a local IPA that we thought tasted as good as Sierra Nevada Pale Ale or Liberty Ale. And so that's really Monumental IPA was what really dragged us over the starting line to start the brewery. So those are my two favorite beers. And to this day, it hasn't changed since we opened.
Your two favorite children.
Works if you have two kids.
Love them all.
Let's get another question from the Q&A. We've got Rob A here says, from when you first opened to today, how much has the brewery expanded and what do you attribute to its success?
Cool. Well, we've expanded, let's see, the first year we opened in 2011, we brewed 3,000 barrels of beer, which in cases, that's about, I have to do my math here, it's about 40,000 cases of beer. And I'm striking 2020 from the record just because of the business year that this has been. But in 2019, we produced 16,000 barrels of beer. So we grew from 3,000 to 16,000 in 2019. So it's an average of roughly 25% growth year over year, over 9 years.
That's great.
So that kind of growth has really taken us through, and the expansion has been every year we've expanded. We've invested in more tanks, more capacity, and we've also invested in more quality control measures. So we've bought more lab equipment. As we're ordering more tanks, we're also trying to make our lab and QC efforts more sophisticated so that as we're increasing our production, we can also continue to increase our quality. And that's something that's very, very important. And the second part of that question, what do we attribute our success? It's the quality, and it's just paying attention to quality every step of the way and making sure that as we invest in capacity, we're not just trying to brew more beer, we're trying to brew better beer as we grow every year. And we made a commitment early on that we would only increase our production capacity if we can also continue to increase our quality control and our quality assurance program. And so we continue to invest in both sides of the business that way. I saw a question popped up earlier about have we ever had to dump a batch of beer? And the answer is yes, we have, because we test it and we taste every batch. And if things aren't going right, we're going to dump it. And fortunately, because our brewing team is very, very experienced, it hasn't happened often. However, this past year, because 2020 and everything, our 9th anniversary beer, it was going to be a Weizenbach, Colossal 9. That beer didn't ferment properly, and it had diacetyl in it that didn't dissipate. As the beer ferments, the diacetyl is supposed to, it tastes like buttered popcorn. That's supposed to dissipate as the yeast ferments the beer. And it just wasn't fermenting properly. And here's a beer that we had printed t-shirts for. It was our 9th anniversary beer. We had big band around it. It was all pre-sold. And so we had, it was a large financial risk. And this beer, we already had orders for it, but it just wasn't up to our quality standards. And in the end, we had to sewer the beer.
Sewer the beer.
Sewer.
That's what we had to do, just because we talk about quality, but you got to be able to live by those principles if you're going to claim to be a quality forward brewery. So we canceled the party. We sat all the packaging. We were sitting on all the t-shirts. All this. So yeah, but it comes down to quality, and we just had to stick by our principles.
Awesome. Well, as we get ready to wrap up here, Bill, you want to tell us what's next for Port City? What can people expect in 2021? And where can people find Port City beer outside of the DC region?
Cool. Well, our beer is distributed throughout the Mid-Atlantic. So from New York, as far north as New York City, and we get up to upstate New York a bit, down the Mid-Atlantic through as far south as North Carolina. So that's where we are right now. 80% of what we do is around the DC area. So that's pretty much what we focus on. But we do have great distributors that carry our beer as far north as New York, as far south as North Carolina. As far as what to expect in 2021, we look forward to getting back to growth, getting back to when the time is right, welcoming people back to the brewery, having brew tours, having you guys come back and bring your folks back to the brewery. We love welcoming your guests as well.
We love bringing them in
for 2021. Our 10th anniversary is Super Bowl weekend coming up in early February. And so we've brewed a special barley wine. Our beers are always Colossal. So this is Colossal 10, and it's a barley wine that we'll release at the brewery and in cans and in bottles in the market starting the week after that. So that's what's coming up. We've also done a collaboration with a local distillery, Catoctin Creek, out in Virginia, and we did a kind of a basic version of this barley wine 2 years ago, and we put it in bins or tanks and sent it out to the distillery, and they distilled it.
Oh, cool.
And they've been using it in barrels for the past 2 years. So we'll have a single malt barley wine whiskey that they'll release along with the barley wine that'll be in the market early next year. So for our 10th anniversary, we wanted to do something memorable, something really special. So we're looking forward to better times in 2021.
Yes, indeed.
Wow. I cannot get over single malt barley wine derived whiskey. Oh man,
That sounds awesome.
Trip down there. Cool. Another thing I wanted to bring up, what do you call it? The members union? Is that entry still open for that for people in the DC area?
Yes, our beer club is the Porters Union and the Port City Porters Union, and we've actually just opened the membership, the 2021 membership. You can sign up on our website, which is portcitybrewing.com. And it's a limited enrollment, but it's open now, and and it looks pretty good for 2021. So if that's something you're interested in, take a look. And other than that, like I said, we're just looking forward to getting back to normal next year.
Yes, I think we all are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Bill, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and talk to us about Optimal Wit, wine, the cow painting, everything.
Pineapples.
Thank you so much.
This was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Bill.
Yeah, this was fun, Brian. Thanks for having me. And Caitlin, thanks for having me. Enjoyed it. And we'll see you guys soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bill. We're going to wrap up here. That was awesome, Cait.
That was so cool.
Yes.
I'm like starstruck.
Awesome.
Oh, well, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I thought that was a bunch of fun, and the fun continues on citybrewtours.com/Christmas, where tonight we have posted a beer quiz for you put together by our marketing guru. So go ahead and take that quiz.
Our marketing guru's name is Taylor. I'm realizing now that I just wrote marketing guru in the script.
You just
I don't think I
wrote
put her
marketing.
name in there. So Taylor, our awesome marketing guru, has also helped us with all of these blog posts and a lot of our content for this. Put together an awesome beer quiz for everybody to check out. So please check that out. citybrewtours.com/Christmas. portcitybrewing.com for more information on Bill's amazing brewery. And if you're ever in the DC area next year, please stop by and check out Port City. Tomorrow is going to be a very different show. I need to prep everyone. It's New Year's Eve, so we're getting ready to have a ton of fun tomorrow night. Cait, you'll be joining us, I believe, as our chat moderator.
Absolutely.
But I will be joined by a new co-host and a bunch of other City Brew Tours expert beer guides. And we're going to have a good time and set everybody up for an awesome New Year's Eve. And so we can all say goodbye to this terrible, awesome year. And then when the clock turns over, magically all our problems are going to go away. So we're super excited to start that. Cool. Anything else you want to say, Cait? I'm just completely gone off script here.
How dare you? Oh, don't worry. I will be here, Steve T. I will be here. I just won't be on screen. I'm here for you guys. But thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers. Not that much to chug left.